86a. 86a. The Mishnah. Shtei chaburis shayoichem bayis. Two groups that are eating one korban Pesach in the same house. So they bring the food home, korban Pesach home, and then they split into two groups. It's one korban Pesach. So they're allowed to do that. So your korban Pesach has to be eaten with a group. The bayis echad is supposed to be eaten in one group. We're learning that they turn the sides, they can actually divide it, they can split up the same korban Pesach. This group takes half, this group takes half. And they turn their faces to the side and they eat at separate tables, separate rooms. And bayis echad probably means a room. Okay. And they eat. They can turn their faces to the side and eat. There's a hot water urn in the center that they use to mix the wine with. They would mix wine with hot water, different than what they do today. But that's what they would do, and it would be in the center, and they could each use this, and it was still considered separate groups. There's someone that's serving, and he's serving both groups. So he's eating in one group, though. When he goes to the other group, he has to close his mouth and keep his face facing his own group. So it shouldn't look like he's joining the other group when he's serving them. And then he goes back to his group and he eats. The kala is the exception where she's allowed to turn around and eat. In her own group, she's allowed to turn around and eat. The Gemara is going to say because she's ashamed, because the men are looking at her, she's ashamed to eat while everyone's watching. Okay. Masnis and Mani, we'll get more clarity on the Mishnah of what's going on over there. When we learn the Shittas and or the Machlaikas, we'll see the opinion of the Mishnah. Who's the author of our Mishnah? Gemara says Rabbi Yehudi. The author of our Mishnah is Rabbi Yehuda. The Tanya was taught in a brisa. So we're going to quote two psukim over here that seem to be contradictory. The first pasuk says that you put the blood on the doorpost, on the houses on which you eat it in them. Now, on the houses that you eat it in. Malame, this teaches us, you see, the Oisai is referring to the korban Pesach, and it's in Batim, it's in houses. Yechlu is they eat, right? They eat it in them. So it means they're eating it in the houses. This teaches us that the korban Pesach could be eaten in two groups, and Batim could be translated as groups. What about an individual? Can an individual go from one group to another? See, what we just learned was that the korban Pesach itself could be split in half, and one part goes to one bias, another one goes to another bias, and they eat it in the Isai in two different groups. What about one individual? Can he go from his group, stand up, and go to the other group? Talmud Laimar b'bayis echad yeyachal. In one house, it's eaten. Mikan Amru, from here we say, Shashamish. Okay, 1 second. In one house, it's eaten. Now, what's a contradiction? Before you said it's eaten in houses. Here you say it's eaten in one house. So the explanation here is that Rabbi Yehuda doesn't read it as Yeyachel, it is eaten. He reads it, the bayis echad yoichal. In one house, he eats it. Now, he doesn't actually change the text, but he says that the way I make the drasha is the way that it's simple from the letters. He looks at the letters. It's called Yeshem L'Masiris, where you look at the letters. And what the letters tell me is that Yoichal, he eats. The person. Not Yeyachel, it is eaten, which is a passive. Yechel is the active of he. The yud is he eats. Rabbi Yehuda learns it that it's referring to the active he. It's active that the person eats it. He eats it in one house. That means that even though the Korban Pesach could be divided, but the individual can't go from one group to another. Mikan Amru, from here they said, let's say the shamish is getting the food from inside and he's taking it out to serve it. While he's there, he takes a snack. He sees this is good. They take a taste. Problem is, he just ate in one location. He's not allowed to eat it in another location. So he has a problem. He's going to go, he's going to serve the food. He won't be able to eat it over there where he serves it. So they tell him, Ipikechu, he's smart. So fill up over here on what you're eating right now, because this is going to be the end. Once you put the food out, you won't be able to take it from those locations. If his friends want to do him a favor, they can bring the food. I don't know if they're allowed to bring the food. They can come sit over there and he'll serve right there, and they'll all eat it together in that in the first place next to the oven. It's cold out. That's Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. What is Rabbi Yehuda's opinion? That an individual is not allowed to go from one location to another location to eat the Korban Pesach. However, the Korban Pesach itself could be divided in two. The restrictions are on the person, not on the Korban Pesach. The Korban Pesach itself could be divided. Reb Shimon learns different. Reb Shimon and Rabbi Yehuda are friends. They're both students of Rabbi Akiva. It's Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. He says, that pasuk that says that in the houses you put the blood on the doorposts of the houses, that you eat it in them. Malamed, this tells me that the person is allowed to go from house to house. He's allowed to eat in another location. So, that they eat, each individual, the way he learns it, each individual can go from house to house. You see, there's two ways of viewing this. You can, the way Rabbi Yehuda read this pasuk is alabatim, on the houses, asher yoichlu, that they eat it. Now, that means that each individual eats in his own house the Korban Pesach. That's the way Rabbi Yehuda read it. The way Reb Shimon reads it, alabatim asher yoichlu, is that yoichlu is referring to each individual is allowed to go and eat in batim, is allowed to eat in houses. In the houses in which they eat, you're allowed to take it from one house to another. No, why not? We're not talking about taking the Korban Pesach. We're talking about them standing up and going to another house to eat in with that group as well. Eat with another group. You see, the question is, the plural of batim in the plural of yoichlu, is that both singular? Is that both singulars? That there's batim and they each have individuals, and altogether that becomes the plural? Or do I say that there's batim, that's the plural, and then I have individuals of yoichlu that are eating in several batim? Yeah, I don't know the grammar terms to phrase that, but it would be a question in grammar of what the yoichlu means. The bottom line is that the person can only eat in one place, and we shouldn't say yeah, right. Right. Now I'm trying to same kind. Here we turn the page. Maybe the Korban Pesach itself could be divided into two. Talmud Laimar, oh no, you can't do that. You can only eat it in one house. It needs to be eaten. He reads it yei achel, the passive. It is eaten. It is eaten in one house. One house means one chabura. The Targum actually says over here, the Targum says, b'chabura chada yisachel. It has to be eaten in one group. You follow? Okay. The Targum on this pasuk Memvav, he translates the word bias as chabura. In this instance, it's impossible to translate it in the first pasuk, because over there it says you put it on the doorpost of the houses that you'll eat it in. Over there it can't be. You put it on the doorpost of the group. Groups don't have doorposts. Houses have doorposts. Over there he translates bias as bias. Over here he translates bias as group. Okay, but my kamiflagi, what's the machlekes Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon? Rabbi Yehuda says yeshem le'maseiros. Rabbi Yehuda says you look at the letters. The maseiros is the traditional letters, the tradition that we have of what the correct letters are in the Torah. Rabbi Shimon says yeshem le'mikra. Rabbi Shimon says you look at the way it's read. You look at the vowels. Now, which means that Rabbi Yehuda views it, the pasuk. How do we darshan the pasuk? The bias echad yoichal. He eats it in one house. He's not allowed to go to another house. That's because he looks at the letters. But the way that we have, the way we read it with the vowels, as Reb Shimon, he says yeshem lemikra. He says bias echad yei achel. It is eaten. That means that it can't be divided into two groups. But an individual can go from group to group. Just the Korban Pesach needs to stay in one remain whole in its group. Okay. I like when I learned this by Yeshem Lemekah, Yeshem Lemeseiros. I just mentioned that in English we have the same issue, because before a vowel, if I have, it's called an article, right? A, and if I say an apple, why do I say an apple, not a apple? Because there's a vowel. It starts with the vowel a, so I have to put an n there, a consonant. An apple. Not a apple. What about the word?
Well, word starts in English with an A, with a vowel.
Yeah.
A consonant afterwards.
Yeah. Then the article has an apple.
So if there's an article, it has to have.
Yeah. What happens? What happens when you come to a word that's pronounced with a vowel but spelt without a vowel? So, for example, an hour. I'll see you in an hour. So an H is a consonant. Do I say a hour the way it's spelled, or do I say an hour the way it's pronounced? It's anyway, go figure. I say an hour. Yeshem lemikra in English. Okay, let's say people are sitting. Yeah, I don't know how this came about, but all of a sudden there's a partition between the group. Something fell from the ceiling, a screen came down and divided the group into two. So are they allowed to divide into two? It's one Korban Pesach. According to the opinion that says you're allowed to divide a group into two, that's the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Okay, keep eating. According to Rabbi Shimon, you're not allowed to divide one Korban Pesach into two groups. Right? It has to be eaten in one group. So you're not allowed to continue. You're not allowed to eat it. Unless you get rid of that. Let's say the opposite. Let's say they're sitting in two groups. There's a mechitza between them. And all of a sudden, the mechitza disappears. It collapses, it gets torn away, whatever. So, according to the opinion that one person is allowed to go to a new place to eat, that's the opinion of Reb Shimon. So, he's allowed to go. He's allowed to eat. He can continue, even though now it's as if he's in a new place. Because all of a sudden, there's no mechitzas here. Hey, I was never here before. This is, it's just lift it up. According to the opinion that says that a person's not allowed to go from one place to another, that's Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. So now he's in a new location. Well, he's not in a new location, but his surroundings changed. So he's not allowed to eat. Yosef Rav Kana Rav Kana said this over directly, as if there's no questions here. He said this without frowning at all. This is the pshat.
What does that mean? Yeah. You say Rav Kana?
Yosef Rav Kana. Rav Kana was sitting. The tough and the shin are interchangeable, so it's like Yosef. Right?
Right.
Yosef Rav Kana. Kapashat lamipshat. Pashat means simple. He said it simply, directly, without any questioning of this. Amali Ravashi, the Rav Kana. Ravashi says to Rav Kana, "V'tibai lachi bai." This should not be said directly like that. This should be asked as a question. Do we say silak mechitza v'asiya mechitza? When a mechitza is removed, or when a mechitza is placed, mi havi kabeis makaimis or kabeis chaburz dami alai. Is that like two separate places, and is that like two separate groups or not? That's a question. That's not like a direct. Automatically, you decide if a mechitza goes away. That means as if you went from one house to another. Just because the walls, the surrounding change means you're in a new place. This is sort of like a play, you know. They have the backdrops.
More on the fact that they're sitting together in one place,
Right.
and the fact that the mechitza is now gone, it's not really.
So maybe it's not a new place. In the plays, they have the backdrops. So they take it up, and all of a sudden, hey, it's in a new country. Okay, take it.
Do that on Zoom too.
That's a question. Okay. One pshat over here, very interesting pshat, that Rashi says, the machlekes Reb Yehuda and Reb Shimon of Yeshem Lemikra, Yeshem Lemasiris. Rashi introduces a concept here. Normally, we understand Yeshem Lemikra means that we follow the vowels, the way it's read, like Balkaira, Mikra. Yeshem Lemasiris means we follow the traditional text, Masoretic text of the Torah. Rashi says another pshat, which he rejects, but he says maybe Reb Shimon follows the Masorah. We said Reb Shimon follows the Mikra, but it didn't tell us. No, it said It said Reb Yehuda Savi Yeshem L'Masorah, Shimon Savi Yeshem L'Mikra. Rashi says that he heard another pshat, exactly the opposite. Reb Shimon follows Yeshem L'Masorah. Well, that's not going to fit. He says, what does it mean, Yeshem L'Masorah? It means Reb Shimon follows the Targum, and the Targum is the Masorah. One pshat is he follows the Mikra. Rabbi Yehuda follows the Mikra, the Chumash, which says Rabbi Yehuda follows the Mikra, and Reb Shimon follows the Masorah. So it's an opposite pshat. What would the Masorah mean? He follows the Targum, and the Targum says B'chaburi echad yisachel, that it has to be eaten in one group. It can't be divided up. B'bayis echad yei achel, in one house it is eaten, would also mean that. So he would have to read it. How would Rabbi Yehuda read it according to this? He would have to read it Yeichal. He would have to read it Yeichal, which is what we called before the Masorah, which is strange. Anyway, Rashi rejects this. He says you never find that that's the pshat in the Mikra and Masorah. Mikra and Masorah is always letters versus vowels. Okay. Yeah. Someone wrote he wrote his conversation. He was an Italian scholar. His name was Shmuel David Lutzato. They called him Shadal. Shmuel David Lutzato. No, I don't know if he's related to the Ramchal. I don't know. But anyway, yeah, he lived in the, I think, early 1800s or something. Someone had an argument with him regarding when the vowels were actually made. We think the vowels, I don't know, at least the points and those things were made in Tiberia in the 700-800s or something. Anyway, he claimed that you don't see anywhere in the Gemara that it talks about vowels. So this fellow that's writing, he says his comment, it's like a debate. So he comments back. He says, "What are you talking about? Yeshem L'Mikra means that there's vowels. You don't call it vowels, but they call it Yeshem L'Mikra." So there's vowels. No, we're talking about in the Chumash. When were the vowels? When were the nekudas there? I mean, how old? I mean, we have the keser and Amtseva that has vowels in it, right? Okay. Hakala ifechas penavachulu. The kala turns her face around and she eats. My time. Why does she do that? Amar Rab Chia bar Abba Amar Rab Yechanan. Rab Chia bar Abba says the name of Rab Yechanan. This is a famous student of Rab Yechanan. Mipnei shibusha, because she's embarrassed. She's embarrassed. She's eating with the men that are looking at her, so she doesn't want to eat over there. Start chewing. So she's allowed to turn to the side. Rav Huna Breder Rav Nasan Nikla Lebei Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak. Rav Huna, the son of Rav Nasan, happens to be in the house of Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak. Amru Lei, they said to him, this Rav Huna Breder Rav Nasan, Ma Shimcha, what's your name? Amalahu Rav Huna. He says, my name is Rav Huna. So that's a little surprising. Usually you don't say Rav. He says his name is Rav Huna. Amru Nesev Mara Purya. They said, sit on the couch. Purya is like a fancy chair. Yosef, he sits down right away. Yobale kasa. They give him a cup to drink. Kible b'chad zimna. He doesn't protest. He drinks. He takes it right away. B'shasi b'trei zimna, but he drank it in 2 gulps. And he didn't turn to the side to drink. He drank it right there. Amrulay, my time of Karslach Rav Huna. Why did you call yourself Rav Huna? If your name is Huna, Rav is just honorific, honorary. Why do you call yourself Rav Huna? Amalahu Bala Shemani. That's my name. It means that's what I was called. Now I don't know if that means that he had smicha when he was very young. I don't know if that means that they happened to name him on the bris Rav as if that's a name. You could do that, I guess. Can you imagine? At the bris they called the child Rabbi Huna. So my time ki amrlach nesev apuri yasavta yasvis. Why did, when we told you to sit on the chair, you sat down right away? Shouldn't you be humble and usually people would sit on the floor or on a cushion. We told you to sit at on the couch. That was like a right away. You're supposed to say no, not for me. It's unclear if this is supposed to be in there. Everything that the balabayas tells you to do, you should do, except for tzei, except for leaving. Now, you have to listen to the balabayas. Chutz mitzei, except for leaving. Now, yeah, what does it mean, chutz mitzei? It's a little strange, because if he kicks you out of the house, you're not supposed to leave. There's a lot of different pshatim over here. Some want to learn that what it means, chutz mitzei. So first of all, some people don't have the gears at all. Look, you told me to sit on the chair. I sat down. I'm not going to argue with you. You're the host. Chutz mitzei means once he tells you to leave, then you don't have to listen to him anymore because he's not the host. Because when you're in his house, then you have what would they call that? It's a personal jurisdiction or something. You're under the
personal jurisdiction.
You're in the house. He's the boss of the house. You're in his house. You have to listen to him. But once he kicks you out, so then you can, even if you're still there, but you're not under his jurisdiction anymore. You don't have to listen. He told you to leave. So the chutz mitzei. Once he says to leave, others learn tzei as an acronym. And it means maybe tzarchei ishtoi, if they ask him something if he tells him something about his wife, to fulfill his wife's needs, he doesn't have to listen. Some say that it's an acronym for tzeduki and something else, that he doesn't have to listen to him. There's all different pshatim over here, what the chutz mitzei is. Apparently, there's other places that don't have chutz mitzei. Okay, my time, they ask another question to Rav Huna Bar Nasan. My time, why did you receive the cup right away? Should have said, no, I'm fine. I don't need a drink. You go to someone's house, they say, would you like a drink? They say, no. They say, "Were you sure I have?" You say, "Okay, fine." Amalu, Masarvan Lakatan, they Masarvan Lagadol. You're not supposed to refuse a gadol, a great person. When the angels came to Avram, he gave them food, and right away they said, "Okay, good." They ate. When the angels come to light, they said, "No, we'll stay in the street." He said, "No." They tested them, and they came to his house. So you say Misarvin lekatan, Misarvin legadol. You don't refuse. You don't make a big deal. He tells you what to do. You go do it right away. You don't make a whole to do. My time is tisa b'trei. Why did you drink it in 2 gulps? Amalu the Tanya. I have a brisa. The brisa says, if someone drinks a cup in 1 gulp, he's a gargarin. He's a glutton. And shnayim, if he drinks it in 2 gulps, that's correct manners. Shloisha, if he drinks it in 3 gulps, then migasi haruach. Then he's looking too refined. You're overdoing it, and that's considered arrogance. My time, why didn't you turn your face around when you drink? You drink just in public and everyone's watching. It says that the kala turns around. I'm not a kala. I can drink in front of while everyone's watching. Okay. Rabbi Yishmael Rabbi Yosi Ikla Lebei Rabbi Shimon ben Rabbi Yosi ben Lakunya. Rabbi Yishmael Rabbi Yosi happens to be in the house of Rabbi Shimon ben Rabbi Yosi ben Lakunya. It's another story. No, I read Tanan as part of the last piece. Tanan. Yeah, Rabbi Shmuel Bar Yosi is a Tana.
Yeah,
but it's not saying it in as a brisa over here. It's saying the story in Talmudic language. He happens to be in Rabbi Shimon ben Rabbi Yosi ben Lakunya's house. Yovali kasa. They gave him a cup. Kibla b'chadzimna. He received it right away. Means without them having to ask a second time. B'shasya b'chadzimna, but he drank it in 1 gulp. Amri lei. They said to him, L'sevel amar. Doesn't the master hold that a sheisa kaisav asachas is a gargaron? That if you drink a cup in 1 gulp, you look like a glutton. Amalahu layamri b'kaisach katan. They weren't talking about your small cups, the enach masak and your sweet wine, the crazy rechava and my wide stomach. Yeah, the Gemara in Bava Metzia discusses the waist size of Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yosi. Talks about him and Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon, that they were so wide that if they would stand stomach to stomach, oxen, a pair of oxen or something could walk underneath them or something between them. They were. That's how fat they were. Okay. Amar Rav Huna, that was healthy back then. Okay. I guess if the food's healthy, then the weight is healthy. If the food's not healthy, then the weight's probably not healthy either. Amar Rav Huna, b'nei chabura nechnasin b'shleisha v'yaitzin afilu be'echad. Rav Huna says that the group comes in with 3 people, but they can leave 1 by 1. That means when do they start eating? This is we'll be talking about the Korban Pesach, or just in general. It's Machlekes Rashi and other commentaries. What's happening? Rashi says it's not specifically the Korban Pesach. It says it's just any Suda. I think the Rambam learns it's the Korban Pesach. You sit down. You're the first one there. Do you start munching on the Korban Pesach? You get a head start. By the time everyone else comes, there's nothing left. You didn't leave for everyone else. Well, who says they're going to show up? Right? It's a big question. How long do you wait for the other people to show up? So Rav Huna says you start when there's 3 people, and then they can leave 1 by 1. Now the problem with leaving 1 by 1 is that the waiter is still there serving the last fellow. And there's like that lingering on that the waiter's like, come on, the group is gone. Can you please, I'd like to close up over here. Amar Rabba, that's only if they came at the proper time. And Budaragish Budaila. And that's if the Dayala is the Shamash. He's the one that draws the water. Dala is the drill. The Rugish means I think he was aware that this is what they're going to do. If the Dayala was aware that this is the way they do it, that they leave one by one, so that's the way it works. So then he should be fine with it. The waiter needs to be paid, but the last person needs to pay extra because the waiter had to stay there longer just to serve him. Right? There's a late fee. So but that's not like Ravina. When it comes to paying the waiter, the tip is equal. Doesn't matter how long you stayed there. Okay. Ha'isha b'zman beis baila. Shachar ala baila v'shachar ala aviyah. What happens? The woman gets married, and it comes to the Korban Pesach. They live next to. Let's say they live next door to each other. The son-in-law and the father-in-law, and comes to the Korban Pesach. They're always going back, this, that, whatever. So the father shechts the Korban Pesach with his daughter-in-law in mind, and the husband shechts the Korban Pesach with his wife in mind. Right? He says, we're making our own Pesach. She says, no, I'm going to my parents. So, Teichel Mishal Baila. Nope. She's going to eat from her husband's. If she's in her husband's house already, so then she's going to eat for her husband. Yeah. No, truth is, wait for the Gemara. It's not so simple. Right. Right. Yeah, that's good advice. Halcha regel rishon lasis b'beis. Let's say the first Yom Tov, she goes to her parents' house. They're spending Pesach at the parents' house, at her parents. Shachar ala aviyah v'shachar ala baila. And nevertheless, the husband went and shechted a Korban Pesach for her, and the father also shechted a Korban Pesach with her as one of the registries. Teichal b'makom she writes it. Then she has a choice. Okay, we're gonna have to see in the Gemara, how does she have a choice? How does it work? Does it go retroactive? How does that work? Yasim sheshachto la'apatropusin. Let's say there's orphans that the apotropos. There's several apotroposin. Apotropos is a caretaker for orphans. There's several apotroposin for these orphans. So each one, what is it? Too many cooks. Each one thinks that they're the one that needs to take care of them when it comes to Pesach. So they each shechted a Korban Pesach for this group, for these orphans. Yechab makom shuraitza, or this orphan rather. So he eats in the place that he wants. He can choose. Again, how does that work? Probably children. I'm not sure till what age is considered a yasam. Until he can take care of himself. I'm not sure exactly if it means specifically on the bar mitzvah.
This whole thing doesn't mess the chabura?
The chabura is still going to be the chabura if one person doesn't show up. Yeah, I guess that's the pshat. I guess everyone else is there. They don't have to wait, like we said before.
There was actually but when they shechted, there was an intention for the wrong person.
Yeah, there was an intention there for someone that wasn't going to show up. I don't know. That doesn't spoil the korban, right? Even if it was someone that wasn't even eligible to eat, it wouldn't have spoiled the korban if there's other people there. Yeah, I guess b'diavad it was fine. Yeah, there was this fellow in Jimmy. You remember label Goldshire? It was in Shilabah Harbor. It's an old man. He was a partisan. So it was a funny guy. Anyway, he was 90 years old. He's walking up and down the aisle in the shul. It says, Habrachmanis,
He's an orphan.
yeah. He says, I'm an orphan from both sides. Habrachmanis, he was 90 years old. He was joking. No. So anyway, at what point is it? Anyway, Eved Shel Shnei Shutfim. Let's say there's two partners have a Eved, and where does he go? Where does the Eved go for the Korban Pesach? Go to this one. They share him, right? Lo yochal mishal shneim. He can't eat from either of them. The other person has the rights over him, and it doesn't mean that he agreed to let him go there or to.
Well, no, they can't go anywhere.
Yeah, they're stuck. They're supposed to eat. Oh, 1 second. They're supposed to eat with their master, right? But this person has two masters, so there's two jurisdictions over there. They can't eat. They can't. Yeah, it's going to be a problem. The only solution is they both have to agree that he's going to eat with one of them, and then that would resolve it. This person can't eat with his master because the master didn't have intention to. How does this work? He's owned by two masters, and one of them says, he lets him free. Then he's half free and half slave.
He lets him free on Pesach? That's probably after the cleaning.
Yeah, after the cleaning. So, yeah, right before the Seder. So he says, I only registered my slave, not the free man. He wasn't invited. This person is half free, half slave. Okay, so he's not able to eat from the master. Let's go back to what we said, that there are certain cases where the wife has a choice because she's spending Pesach with her parents, but the husband also shechted the Korban Pesach. Or the Yasim has two caretakers, each one shechted. We said that they have a choice. Shamat mina yesh breira. Obviously, we'll say, we learn from this that yesh breira. Breira means that what we make a decision now, it goes back and says what was actually happening. This is usually a Meiser thing, or other things we say. Someone says that what's part of this should be Meiser, he's still allowed to continue eating, and what's left is going to be the Meiser. That's what he intended for originally. So it goes back retroactive, and there's other concepts of Breira. But anyway, we see from here that retroactive at the time of the slaughtering of the sacrifice, that's who had the real intention. My right said, the Gemara says, no, maybe not. What does it mean, right said, that wherever she wants? She can choose at the time of the slaughtering, not after the slaughtering. At the time of the slaughtering, she chooses. That's what we meant. That would mean it's not a halacha in Hilchos Korban Pesach. It's more a halacha in where's her where she should go, like in Hilchos Derech Eretz or something, or she should be eating with her husband or with her. And over here it says no, she has a choice. Gemara says 1 second. B'raminu, isha, regular isha, in a woman, a wife, the first holiday, echelas mishel avia, she's supposed to eat with her father. Mikan ve'elach reitza, echelas mishel avia, reitza mishel baila. But afterwards she has a choice. Here you're saying she eats with her husband. Before you said, now you're saying she eats with her father. Like kasha. Gemara says it depends on the scenario. You can't make rules about this. Kan b'redufa leilach, kan b'sheina redufa. What is redufa? Redufa means she's running to her father's house. If she goes to her father's house always, then she would eat with her father. With her father. If she doesn't run to her father's house because she's happy in her husband's house, it may have to do with her age also. She's happy in her husband's house, so then it's she eats with her husband. Just personality, just the young girl that gets married, she's always running back to her parents. If she gets married a little older, she's already out of the house anyway. So she's not always running back. The ksiv, as it says in the pasuk, Az hayisi be'inav k'motzei shalom. Then I'll be in his eyes like someone that finds peace. What does that mean? Be in his eyes. I was beloved by him. I found him to be. I found peace in his house, referring to a woman that's happy in her husband's house. Here it calls it her father-in-law's house. That means, I guess in those days, the husband would take her in, possibly into her father-in-law's house as well, into her father-in-law's, which means his father. But she still runs back to her father's house to say how happy she is with her husband. It says on that day, says Hashem, you will call me your husband, you won't call me your master. Husband was more beloved than master. Ishi is my husband versus Bailey. Talking about that she's happy in her husband's house, and that's when she is going to eat the Korban Pesach with her husband. That term of Ishi versus Bailey means that when she's happy in her father-in-law's house, then it's her husband. Then she calls her husband Ishi, and when she's in her father's house, then she calls her husband my master. It's less. She's less comfortable. Okay, we go back to another pasuk. We quoted a pasuk in Shir Hashira, Mazi Yisabenu K'mitzvah Shalom. We go back some psukim over there. It says, Achislanu Katana. We have a young sister, but she didn't develop breasts yet. That's she's young. Amrab Yechanan Zu Elam. This is the place called Elam. Rashi says this is where Daniel was. Daniel says, Ani Daniel Yisi B'Shushan Abira Asher Be'elam. So Daniel studied Torah, but he wasn't able to teach Torah. However, Ezra was in Bavel, and Ezra was able to teach Torah as well. They merited to learn Torah, but they didn't merit to teach. That's the symbolism here of the breast. Breast is that they're able to nourish others. We have a young sister, but isn't able to give over the Torah. Is the Torah compared to milk? I think so. Okay. I am a wall, and my breasts are like towers. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, this is the beginning of the pasuk that we said originally. It starts off with Ani chayma v'shadei k'migdalis as Yisabenu k'motzei shalom. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Ani chayma. What does it mean? I am a wall. It's protection, probably. Zu Torah. This is the Torah. V'shadei k'migdalis, and my breasts are like towers. This is referring to Elo Talmid Chachamim. This is referring to the Torah scholars. Because these are the towers the towers are also protection, but they also give over the Shadek Migdalis, the breasts that will teach the Torah to others. That's the Talmid Chachamim. Rav Amar Ni Chayma Zu Knesset Yisrael. I am a wall. This is the Jewish people. The Shadek Migdalis, the towers are Elu Bate Knesiyas and Mati Midrashis. That's the protection. You have a new shul, new kailo. New base medrash, that adds a new yeshiva, that adds protection to the community. Amar Rav Zutra Bar Tuvia Amar Rav. Rav Zutra Bar Tuvia says the name of Rav. What's the meaning of the pasuk? Asher baneinu kinetiyim, our sons are like saplings, plants. Migudalim b'noreim, they grow up in their youth. B'neseim kuzaviyos, our daughters are like corners. They're carved in the like the form of a palace. Asher banenu kinetiyim, our sons are like saplings that are growing. Ela bachur Yisrael shleitam l'tamchei. This is referring to the young children that never tasted the taste of sin. This means that they're still growing straight. There's no break in the young saplings. Benesayim Kazavias, our daughters are like corners. Ela Basulis Yisrael. These are the Jewish girls. She'oigdais Peschayim Lebalayim, that they bind their openings for their husbands. That means that they don't have relations before they get married. That means when they're married, they're still a basula. They're still a virgin. And another pshat is she'oigdais Peschayim Lebalayim, is that they relate. Oigdais, not as eged, as in a bind. They bind, but haggadah, to say, they say they're opening up the nida. They tell their husbands when they become a nida, even though they have desire to be with their husband, but nevertheless they still tell their husband when their pischei nida begins. And they're filled like the corners of the mizbeach, the mizrak, like the bowls. In the corners of the mizbeach that got the blood, they would fill up with blood. This is referring to, Rashi says, that even though they're filled with desire to be with their husbands, but nevertheless they, which depending on which pshat, even though they're filled with desire, but nevertheless they wait until they're married, or even though they're filled with desire, they tell their husbands when they're in nida. Another pshat, another source. Our corners are filled with giving out storage, from storage to storage, from zan is sustenance, which means storage. Okay, it's another pasuk that says that they're filled with desire. They're carved with the carving in the form of the chamber of a palace. Both these and these, both the boys that didn't taste the taste of sin, and the girls that are careful, it's as if the tavnes heichal over here would mean the binyan, the building of the heichal. It's as if the heichal was built during their days. Okay, let's leave it over here. Ishaya, discuss Ishaya's prophecy. Have a good day, everyone.